Hello, this is Dean Phoenix with a Witcher 3 video, this time about the basics and tactics for the sub-game of Gwent. Gwent's a really fun sub-game, and it's something that I would recommend that you play when you're playing Witcher 3. It's a nice little diversion. Now, for the basics of Gwent, there are 3 different types of cards, and then there are multiple things on top of that, like abilities and special aspects of cards as well. There are 4 decks, and they all have different abilities, and they all have different leader cards. Now, the 3 types of main card are combat cards, ranged cards and siege cards, and they're played on 3 different rows on the board. So for the siege cards, they're played at the back or bottom row, and the ranged cards are played in the middle, and the close combat are on the top. Each deck also has a leader card, and you get to use the leader ability once per battle when you're playing opponents, and they do different things. So they can either destroy some of the opponent's powerful cards, or they can double the value of some of your cards, or they can have other effects like clearing or playing weather cards. So the 3 types of cards, like I say, are combat, ranged and siege, and then you have regular cards and hero cards. Hero cards we'll come on to a bit later. You also have special cards and weather cards. Your deck is made up of a minimum of 22 of the normal cards, and then up to 10 special cards. You randomly draw 10 cards at the start of each game, so you want to make sure that you have as close to 22 of the base cards as possible, so that you're making sure that you have a better chance to get the higher cards. The 4 decks are the Northern Realms, the Scoia'tael deck, the Nilfgaardian deck and the Monster deck, and then in Blood and Wine there's an extra deck which is the Skellige deck, which is based on the Skellige characters. There are lots of different types of cards, and they each have a value. See, this is a 4 value card there, and there are many different types of special abilities on top of that. The person who wins each round is the person with the most score when both players have either run out of cards or passed the round. So there are lots of different types of cards in the game, and some of them are higher value and some of them are lower value, so you want to make sure you're trying to get the higher value. You build up your deck, and the starting deck is the Northern Realms one, because you won't have enough cards to use any of the other decks until later on. So there are different types of cards. There are type bond cards, which is a special ability. There are muster cards, which will call other cards onto the field, even if you only play one of the cards with the muster ability. There are scorch cards, which will destroy a high value, and there are spies and decoys. When spies, you play on the other side of the field, and they give you extra cards drawn from your base hand. So there are lots of interesting things that you can do. You can also double the value of any cards on a given row with a Commander's Horn card. So we'll come on to those later, and after you play a card it goes into your graveyard, and then you can resurrect those cards using a medic card if you wish. So there are lots of different types of cards. I'm going to show you some of these special cards and how we build up the deck. So hero cards are the cards with the gold outline, and they are not subject to any of the other abilities or anything else that's put on that row. So you can't double a hero card with a Commander's Horn on that row, but likewise it can't be scorched and it can't be affected by weather. So those are very sturdy cards. It's a good idea to have a few of those in your deck. You get most of those from special quests in the game and from beating various players. There are also spy cards and type bond cards. Type bond cards have the handshake emblem on, and when you play 2 of those or more together, each one that you play increases the score of the card. So if you play this blue stripes commando that you get in the Northern Realms deck, that'd be 4 points. If you play another, it'd be 8, and if you play the third one, they'd all increase to 12. So they can get really high damage. The scorch cards will destroy the highest number on the field, the highest value cards on the field, including your own, so you have to be very careful about when you play scorch cards, and they're really effective against certain decks like the Northern Realms one with the type bond, and especially the monster deck that has a lot of muster cards. Decoys are fantastic cards, and they will take a card from that's already been played on your side of the field and allow you to play it again. Now what this can do is the most useful application for it is to take spy cards that the opponent has played on your side, play it back on their side and get even more cards there. You can also use the Commander's Horn, and Commander's Horn can be played one-time use card. They can't be resurrected from the graveyard, and that's the same for any special cards, and that doubles the value of any cards on the row, so that's a really useful card as well. You can buy those from innkeepers. For the weathers, there are Torrential Rain, Biting Frost and Impenetrable Fog, and they reduce the value of a card down to 1 of all the cards on the row, and that affects both players. And then you can clear weather abilities with the clear weather card. So if you play Biting Frost against the monsters deck, for example, and they've got like 80 score on that row for 10 cards, each one will be reduced to 1 point. So that's a really useful thing, and weather plays a big part, especially early on before you've got a lot of good cards. There's a lot of tactics goes into the weather. There are various other things as well. If you see a plus on a card, that's a morale, and that will increase every card on that row by +1. So lining up a lot of cards and putting on one row and putting a morale boost is really useful. And then the best cards in the game, in my opinion, are the spy cards with the eye on. And these are played on the opponent's side of the field instead of yours, and so it gives them more score. But when you play a spy card, you get 2 cards from your base deck. So even if you started with 10 cards like you do normally, and then play a spy card, you'd end up with 11. So that's a really great way of getting powerful cards. And the little heart with the plus is a medic, as we discussed earlier. So if you've already played a card or it's been scorched and sent to your graveyard, you can play it again with a medic card. Now that Yennefer card was a gold trim hero card, so that can't be replayed with a decoy, but there are medic cards like this one, which is a normal card, so you can play that, resurrect a card from your graveyard, and then use a decoy to take that card off the field, play it again, and you'll get the medic ability again. As well as the Scorch being a card by itself, there are also certain cards that have a Scorch ability and will destroy a certain set of cards on the opponent's row. So there's the Shrew card that I just showed you there for the Scoia'tael deck, and there's Villain Tretameth, which is a random card that you win, and that can go into any deck. That's a neutral card, and if you play that, it will destroy all of the highest value cards, equal value cards, on the opponent's melee row, and that's one of the best cards in the game. The Scoia'tael deck also has agile cards, and these with the little sword and bow and arrow emblem can be played on either the close combat row or on the ranged row, and that's a really useful thing because you can use them to put hit weather on your opponent's card, and then you can line up your own cards outside of the weather and get the maximum score that way. When you first play a game of Gwent, you get your deck together, and then when you go to play a game, you will have 10 random cards from your deck, and this is why I want to keep it close to 22 cards as possible, so you can get the most useful cards as often as possible. There is an element of randomness to it. You can switch 2 cards at the start from your 10, so if you don't like some of the cards that you've got, or you think you have a chance at getting a better card, you can get those there. See, I switched out the Scorch there because I wanted a chance at getting a spy card, and I got another spy card. Now I can play the spies and get more of the cards to try and outlast people. When a round is passed, one player passes around, the other player can carry on playing. So here my opponent's passed because he's got 10 points, I think that's enough, but then I play a couple more cards and I end up winning that round. There are also perks for each deck, and they all have a different perk, and I'll cover that when I do a separate video for each deck. The perks that are for Northern Realms, when you win a round, it gives you an extra card. Nilfgaard wins any ties, any rounds that finish in a tie, Nilfgaard automatically wins. Scoia'tael lets you choose who goes first out of you and the opponent, and the monster deck will leave one random normal card, not heroes, but one random normal card on the field at the end of a round, so it starts with a slight advantage next time. And the Skellige deck will play 2 cards at the start of the 3rd round. The decks have different strengths. The Scoia'tael monsters are probably a little weaker because the Scoia'tael's more balanced and it doesn't have any type bond cards, and the monster deck has a lot of powerful muster cards, but it's very reliant on close combat. So with the spies, the Northern Realms and Nilfgaard decks are a little bit more consistent. Now, as I was saying before, the spies and decoys are some of the most important in the game, in my opinion, and it's very, very important that we use the spies correctly, and it's why the Nilfgaard and the Northern Realms deck can be among the most potent decks. So when you play a spy, it counts towards the opponent's score. See, it's counted for 4 score for the opponent there, but I got 2 cards. There's also this card, which is the Mysterious Elf card, which you get a lot later in the game. It's a level 24 quest, and that is a hero card, so that's the only spy card that can't be decoyed and played back on the opponent's side. A lot of matches between Northern Realms and Nilfgaard decks will come down to decoying spies and repeatedly replaying them. And once a spy's been used and the round is finished, or it's been scorched, so it's in your graveyard, you can also replay spies using the medic cards. This is an extremely useful tactic, and you see here the opponent's playing Nilfgaard and I'm playing Northern Realms, and we're both just playing and decoying spies repeatedly, so we end up getting a lot of cards. And this is one of the slightly frustrating aspects of Gwent, because even if you have a good chance of pulling some good cards, you will eventually be subject to random chance. So you see here I got one of my decoys and quite a few spies, but I haven't got either of the other 2 decoys yet. But not to despair, what you can do is you can use the medic cards to replay the spies in the later rounds, and then hopefully get some more of the spies, carry on playing them and get enough cards to be able to win the match. This is why the Nilfgaard and Northern Realm decks are so powerful, and also why the Scoia'tael and particularly the monsters can struggle a little bit, because the monsters deck only has Yennefer as the medic and it doesn't have any others. So it's really important for me anyway. I always recommend having 3 decoys in all the decks, because you want as many chances to decoy the opponent's spy cards and give yourself a fighting chance to get your own powerful cards and win the match. So you see I've passed around there because I've got a very high score, but the opponent can continue playing cards. Now if you're losing a round, it's very important that you play any spy cards if you've passed or lost that round, because it doesn't matter if the opponent gets more of the score there, because you're already passing the round, so to give yourself a better chance of winning later on. So here I play a medic card and I get the other spy played on the field, and that gives me a chance to get one of my own spies, which actually happens, and then I can carry on playing them and give myself enough cards to win the match. So with the monster deck and the Scoia'tael deck, it's very important to have decoys and to keep hold of your medics if the opponent is likely to play spy cards, so that you can decoy them back or play them with a medic and get them that way. There are a lot of other things to consider as well when playing Gwent. The tight bond cards can be extremely powerful, but you have to be very careful of the order that you play them in. So you have here, the opponent has played his first of the tight bond cards there, and then he plays the second, and with the Commander's Horn, that dandelion card on the row on the far left of the opponent's side, that's doubling up his cards on the close combat row. So those are really powerful at 16, but they're the most powerful cards on the field at the moment. So later on you'll see what happens, and that's why you have to be careful, because they are more suspect and vulnerable to Scorch than the other cards. One of the other things I just did there as well is the card on the bottom row on my side of the field is a medic card and a normal card, and as I said before, you can take cards off and then replay the medic, and it'll let you have another chance to play a card on that side as well. So you see here I just took the decoy to take the spy and played it again, and then that's brought out the mysterious elf card, so I can play that and carry on getting a lot more cards. Now the opponent has a massive lead at the moment, but this is why the order of the cards you play is very important. Because he's played his tight bond cards already and I have a Scorch card, I can Scorch those 2 cards because they're equal value, so the Scorch removes the highest value card on either side of the field. So in total, so because the 16 cards are there, they get scorched, and then I've played Villain Tretameth, and that also scorches the cards on the opponent's close combat row because his score on that row is over 10, and because those 3 cards were 10 each, it scorches them because they're of equal value. So the opponent's just lost an enormous amount of points there just from the 2 scorch cards, and the opponents will do this to you a lot as well. So as you can see here, I'm playing it slightly differently. So whilst he's played a lot of powerful cards early on, I'm keeping all my tight bond cards, and the opponent's also played his weather card. But because I have such a big lead from playing all the spy cards, I have such a larger number of cards. If I play the cards in the right order, I can get him to use up his good cards, and then either I could pass the round if I'm going to lose it and win in round 3 because I have more cards, or I can make him use up the good cards and then use my own cards when he's already passed. So here I'm putting down the Commander's Horn instead of playing the tight bond cards, and it makes the opponent pass because he's not able to play the Scorch cards or whatever weather cards he had left, because it would have hurt him more than me, because I've saved my good cards for later in the round. So you can see here I've got the tight bond cards, and especially with the Commander's Horn, when I play all of these cards, the scores are absolutely enormous. So it goes from 86 to 198 because each of those cards is boosted to 12 on the close combat row, and then these 2 cards are boosted to 10, and then all of that's doubled. So the order that you play the cards is really important, and tight bond can be very powerful. So just be mindful of how you're doing that and what order you play them in. The Commander's Horns are very useful, and they go especially well with the muster cards. You can see here I've got 3 of the same muster card in my deck, and there's 4 in total in this monster deck that I have. And when I play them, it draws the cards not only from the main deck but also from my hand. Whereas with this one, I play the 1 muster card and it draws the 2 out of my hand instead. So you want to make sure that you play muster cards where before your spies wherever possible, because you don't want to draw in the extra muster cards into your main deck because that minimises the value. And you also want to make sure that you try and protect them by having 1 higher value card than the muster cards that you're playing, so that in total they're better. See here I bait the opponent into using Villain Tretameth, so he destroys that card, and it lets me safely play the vampire muster cards, which are extremely powerful. And even though I've only got the 2 vampire cards in my deck there, it'll draw the other ones in. So wherever possible at the start of a round with muster cards, you just try to have 1 of each type of muster card, especially when you're playing the monster deck. I hope you find that useful, and I'll be doing videos for each of the 4 separate decks. Thank you.